Hello. All right. So in this particular video, I will show you how to complete the square for a quadratic expression, and we are going to reveal the min and max value, y value of a parabola. Okay. So that sounds a little complicated, but if you can kind of follow the process, it's actually all right. Might take some of you some time to get used to this though. Okay, but anyway, so let's start off with something you may have learned in Algebra 1. So in Algebra 1, you may have learned about this thing called a parabola. Okay, so this parabola is going to open upward, right? So it's going to open up, and as you see here, as we go down this parabola here, it doesn't go anywhere past 0. So it doesn't go anywhere past 0 here. It only goes anywhere from 0, the y value of 0, and above. Okay, so if we're only considering the y values, basically this is the minimum value that it will reach. Okay, so that's just a little reminder if you didn't learn it before. So let's say we have the function y equals x squared, or just in general, any sort of parabola that looks like this or has this. So generally, it's always going to, as long as you see, oh, that's bad. As long as you see that the sign in front of here is positive. So the sign in front of here is positive. What we're going to have is eventually that parabola is going to reach a minimum value. A minimum value. Okay, so what we have here, so if the sign is positive, right? So if the sign is positive, then we have a minimum value. So if the sign is positive, we have a minimum value. Okay, so all right, so let's try to do an example. So let's say I have something like y equals x squared plus 6x minus 14. Something that looks like this. Okay, so generally what you want to do when you're starting off this process called completing the square, let's go ahead and just write this again. And what we're going to do is we're going to put parentheses around our x squared term and the 6x term. So I'm going to put parentheses here and here. Now, in order to start this process called completing the square, what we're going to do is we need to balance out the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So let's say I do that right now. So whatever we need to do on the left-hand side, we also need to do on the right-hand side. Okay, so what we have is we are going to add blanks, and basically this is how we're going to complete the square. We need to add blanks on the left-hand side. And then what we have here is we need to fill out, so we have x squared plus 6x, and we need to figure out what goes in this blank here. Okay. And then we're going to subtract 14. Okay. So the way completing the square works is that you only look at what's in the parentheses. You only look at what's in the parentheses here. That's why I was trying to try to make sure you guys understood that in class. So yeah, make sure you only look at what's in the parentheses. Okay. Now, if you had to identify what the coefficients are, like A, B, and C in this case, well, C is going to be the blank. A is going to be 1. We only need B. To complete the square, we only need B. In this case, our B term is just this positive 6. Okay? So we have B equals 6. Okay? So basically what we're doing, as we're doing this process called completing the square, the way this works is we just take our b term, divide it by 2 and square it, and basically this is what goes in the blanks, if you're wondering. Okay, so let's try to do that. So what I have here is we have our b term, and we're doing b divided by 2 squared. So what we know, if we plug this into here, right? So what we have is we have 6 divided by 2 squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 3 times 3, or in other words, that is 9. So what this means is we're going to put a 9 here and a 9 here. Okay? Now, what we want to do, so this is also an important part of completing the square. So what you want to do is, well, you're going to write the left-hand side, that stays as is. Now let's look at what we have in the parentheses here. This is why factoring was kind of important. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6, right? Two numbers that multiply, can't spell, multiply to 9 and add to 6. Do that correctly, and you're going to realize that those two numbers are basically x plus 3 times x plus 3, and then subtract 14. So what we did is we factored this expression that we have here, and it factors down to x plus 3 times x plus 3, because 3 times 3 is 9, 3 plus 3 is 6. Okay. Next, we can also rewrite this. We can also rewrite this expression with x plus 3 times x plus 3. So when we rewrite this, basically this becomes x plus 3 squared. And then we're going to subtract 14. Okay. Now, what we can do is we want to get y by itself. So in order to get y by itself here, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 9 on both sides. So when we subtract 9 on both sides, what we get on the bottom is going to be y equals, and then x plus 3 squared minus 23. Okay? And this is basically our parabola. Okay? Now, in order to find our minimum value, so you see here, if you have a parabola, if the sign is positive, as you look here, we're going to have a minimum value. Okay? And that minimum value is basically determined by just looking at the number on the outside. Okay? So, what this implies is that the minimum value is going to be at y equals negative 23. Alright? So, in the next video, I'll give you more context, like what does this mean. Okay? Hi. Hello. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a little bit of context of what we just did. Because you might look at this like, what just happened? Alright, so let me just give you some context. Alright, so we know that this expression here, right? Let's go ahead and put that into Desmos. So I have Desmos right here, just to give you a little bit of context. If you want to type that in, you can type that in. So x squared plus 6x minus 14. So that is our equation of a parabola. Okay. What we found out is we changed that expression to look something like this. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and type that right there. So I have y equals, and then x plus 3 squared minus 23. So as you see, the green curve here kind of just goes right on the red curve. So those two, what this means is these two equations are basically the same thing. So let's go and analyze this a little further. If we analyze this green parabola, that we created, if you look at the y value doesn't go anywhere past negative 23 going down this way. It only goes from negative 23 and above. So what this means is this point here is our minimum y value. And our minimum y value, as you see, is right here. So we got y equals negative 23. And that is, yeah, shown by just looking at that number right there. Yep. So that's the neat thing about this thing called completing the square, if you're wondering. So it kind of just tells you the minimum or maximum value of a parabola. Now, I forgot if I mentioned this in the other video or not, but I should probably have explained the purpose of this here. So the purpose of this is if you do something to one side, you're gonna have to do it to the other side. So when you do this thing called completing the square, if you're adding 9 to this side, you're gonna have to add 9 to the other side, if that makes sense. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to show you another example, right? So let's say we have y equals 2x squared minus 16x plus 37. Okay, so our goal for this is we want to kind of rewrite this expression and identify what our minimum and maximum in this case, what our minimum value is. Okay, so what we can do is just to help you out, what I showed you in the first video, what you want to do is you want to group certain expressions together. So what I see here is I can group these expressions right here. Okay, what we can do is we can pull out a 2. We can pull out a 2. So this, we have y equals, if we pull out a 2 here, we have parentheses, and then we have x squared, and then we have negative 16x divided by 2, and it's going to be a negative 8x. And then plus 37 comes along for the ride on the outside. Okay. Next, we need to set up our blanks for completing the square. So we have y, and then we have plus something, and that equals 2 times, and then we have x squared minus 8x, and that's plus something. Close the parentheses, and then plus 37. Okay, so what we're gonna have to do is this lovely thing called completing the square, right? So in order to complete the square for this here, we need to look at this term here. So we need to look at that number. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking negative 8. So we're taking b equals negative 8 right there. Okay, and what we need to do is basically that expression b divided by 2 squared is going to go in those blanks. Okay, b divided by 2 squared will go in those blanks. So what we have here is, since b is negative 8, so b divided by 2 squared, we're plugging in negative 8. So we have negative 8 divided by 2 squared. Negative 8 divided by 2 is going to be negative 4. And negative 4 squared, negative 4 times negative 4 is going to be a positive 16. So that means we have a 16 here. Now this one is a little bit tricky. So as you see, if we had to distribute this 2, right, basically we have 2x squared minus 16x plus 32 plus 37. We have an extra 32 compared to what we have here, here, and here. We have an extra 32 that we didn't, that is not accounted for. So what goes in this blank, if you kind of can see that, is we're doing 2 times 16. Okay, so 2 times 16, this is y plus 32 equals 2 times x squared minus 8x plus 16 plus 37. Okay, so next what I see is we can take this expression here. We're trying to find two numbers that multiply to 16 and add up to negative 8. Two numbers that multiply to 16 and add up to negative 8. Leave negative 4 and negative 4 will work. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So this expression becomes y plus 32 equals 2 times x minus 4 times x minus 4 plus 37. Next, what I see here is x times 4 times x times 4 is going to be 2 times x minus 4 squared. Right? So we can just group those together. Plus 37. Last, we want to get y by itself. So in order to get y by itself, we can subtract 32 on both sides. So when we subtract 32 on both sides, we get y equals 2 times x minus 4 squared, and then 37 minus 32 is going to be a positive 5. Next, what we want to do is we want to identify the minimum value. The minimum value is just this number in front here. So basically our minimum value is going to be y equals 5. It's going to be our minimum value. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph this just to make sure. Okay, so we have y equals, so we have y equals 2x squared minus 16x plus 37, and we have our other expression, so we have 2 times x minus 4 squared plus 5. And as you see, the green curve goes right on the red curve, so that means we have completed the square correctly. So if you look at this graph here, it has a minimum value of y equals 5. It doesn't go anywhere past that. That is our minimum value. It goes to no lower than y equals 5. Okay? And that is exactly what we have here. Right. And again, we just look at this here, so we know that's our minimum value. And that is it. Alright, so let me know if you have any questions on this. Alright, bye. Hello. Alright, so now I'm going to show you another example, and now we're going to go a little bit faster, because hopefully now maybe you have seen a pattern. Maybe you have not, but we will see. Okay, so let's say we're given this expression here. Okay, so like I showed you earlier, what you want to do is you want to put parentheses around these terms. Okay, once you put parentheses on those terms, see if you can pull out a common factor. In this case, we can pull out a 3. So we have 3 times, and then x squared minus, so 6x divided by, negative 6x divided by 3, negative 2x, and then we have a plus 10. Okay, so next, in order to complete the square, we need to create our blanks. Okay, so creating our blanks, y plus something, then equals 3 times x squared minus 2x plus something, and then plus 10. Alright, so if we fill in these blanks here, we need to identify our b term based off this expression. Our b term based off this expression is going to be negative So b equals negative 2. That's all we need for this. So we take our b term, divided by 2, and square it. So plug this in. So negative 2 divided by 2 squared, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is going to be positive 1. That means we have a 1 here. Be very careful as you're doing this, because we're distributing this 3 in. As we distribute this 3, we have 3 on the right hand side. So if you try to reason it out, we would have 3 times 1 on this side. So in other words, this is just 3. Okay? Next, what we can do is we can factor this expression. Okay, so if we were to factor this expression right here, we're trying to find two numbers that multiply to 1 and add up to negative 2. This pair of numbers here should work. Okay? So when we write this out, y plus 3 equals 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 1 plus 10. Here we can group these together. So what we have is this is y plus 3 equals 3 times x minus 1 squared plus 10. Last step we need to do is we need to isolate y. So in order to isolate y, subtract 3 on both sides. What we are left with is y equals 3 times x minus 1 squared plus 7. So this here is the same thing as what we have up there. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to identify our minimum value. Our minimum value is a number that's right in front of here. So our minimum value is going to be y equals 7. Y equals 7 is going to be our minimum value. Right? So let's go ahead and take this original expression and just show you what we did. Okay, so I'm going to open up I'm going to open up Desmos. So right, so I'm going to clear the screen. So we have 3x squared minus 6x plus 10, and we have y equals 3 times x minus 1 squared plus 7. So as you see, we did the completing the square process correctly, and the purple curve goes right on the red curve. Okay, so if we look at this parabola, right, the y value goes all the way down to y equals 7. That is our minimum value. Minimum value is y equals 7. And if you are wondering, that is exactly what we have there. Our minimum value is y equals 7. Whew. Let me know if you have any questions on this. Okay?